Good afternoon, everyone. So we will go further on our journey into the Yoga Sutra. Now, before we enter into today's sutras, just some general background talk. That there are 195 sutras. Now, whenever we are studying any sutra, the first thing we have to see is what is this sutra telling us about attention? The whole spiritual journey, the medium of the spiritual journey is attention. So attention has its source somewhere in the divine, and it flows out of the divine and it flows out of our five senses. And it is through attention that we live life. Now, on any path, any religion, the reverse journey, that is starting from attention which is stuck in objects of the senses, which we call as identification, to taking it from there back to the source from where attention came. This is the journey. So everything, the common medium in everything is attention. So whenever we study any sutra out of the 195 sutras, the first thing we want to study is how is attention intertwined in this sutra? What is this sutra telling us about the state of attention? Then we started with the first few sutras. We just take a general kind of revision. That yoga is the calming of the mind, chitta vritti nirodha. So we will again ask ourselves when we are studying the sutra, the first question we will ask is, what is this sutra saying about attention? What is this sutra telling us about calming the mind? This is in general. Now the mind is not calm because of habits, knots, granthis, blockages in our psychic structure. So Mr. Tavaria says that yoga is calming of the mind, calming of the thinking instrument, and healing of the psychic nature. So the third thing we will see is what is this sutra telling us about psychic nature? In the next two sutras, Tavaria Sahib says there is an outer man and inner man. So we will again see what is this sutra telling us about outer man? What is this sutra telling us about inner man? And finally, Gurdjieff has three fundamental faculties: attention, consciousness, and will. So we will say, what is this sutra telling us about consciousness and will? So it is, these will be our jot down points, sort of. So whenever we study any sutra in the Yoga Sutra, we will study them against these points, at the background of these points. And most important out of all this is, what is this sutra talking about attention? Attention is the most important. Now, last time we talked about abhyas, tatra sthito, yatra abhyas, and we took two meanings of the word tatra. the first meaning we took was out of these two, that is out of Abhyas and Vairagya. Patanjali is saying, I am now talking about Abhyas. And we also saw the meaning of Tatra, meaning there. There means previously there or after there. And in that we took 3 sutras. There meaning Chitta Vritti Nirodha. There meaning Drashta Swarupe Avastha. And there meaning this sutra which we are now going to talk about, Satu Dirgha Kale. Right? So there, when these 3 sutras come together, there, and these 3 sutras together form the word Abhyas. So he says, to reach that state of yoga, you do Abhyas. And this Abhyas has to be done over a long period of time, which he's now talking about in this sutra. And we then brought in at that time Gurdjieff's self-remembering. And we said self-remembering has 3 parts. The first part is in my attention free. So if there is vritti nirod, then my attention is free. The second part is holding of presence. So if there is swarupe avastha, I am holding presence. And the third part is in this moment, what is my aim? And my aim in this moment is to hold my presence and keep my attention free for as long a period of time as possible. And that is this sutra which we are going to do today. The third part of self-remembering. So the sutra is Satu Dirgha Kale Nair Antarye Satkar Asevitu Dhrad Bhumi. And it means Abhyas, Satu, and it. Dirgha Kale, that Abhyas becomes well grounded when it is done over a long period of time, without interruption and with intention to discover the truth. I will now read Mr. Tawariya's translation, Tawariya Sahib's translation. When the object to be gained is sufficiently valued and efforts towards its attainment are persistently followed without intermission, then the steadiness of the thinking instrument, that is the restraint of the vrittis, is secure. I must remind everyone that this was Tawariya Sahib's most quoted, most quoted sutra. I mean, he would quote this everywhere, wherever he went. And his special, emphasis was always on, is it sufficiently valued? Is it sufficiently valued? Is your progress on the spiritual path, do you sufficiently value it? And, one day we were sitting and talking, and we were saying that if you live in an ashram, then you get the whole day to do all your practices and all that. And he said, no, but people in an ashram cannot value the practices. He says, you just see people in Bombay, they spend 1 hour going to work in the train, 1 hour coming back to home from work in the train. The whole day they are working. They come back, they have to spend time with their families, right? And out of that whole busy day, they have to take out time to do the practices which are given. And if they can take out time from that busy day, the Bombay people, then they really value their progress. So he says, but if in an ashram you have the whole day to practice, then you cannot have value for what you're doing. And he says, this I mean, this abhyas over a long period of time must be sufficiently valued. There must be real value in it. So we'll go into this word by word. Saha, it, that is that abhyas. Tu, moreover, that abhyas. Dirgha, long. Kala. And here kal means to drive. It comes from the root kal, to drive. I'm sorry, kal means time. It comes from the root kal, to drive. Nair antarya. Nir, without. Antar, between. Yanes, without any interruptedness. That is, it goes in a state of uninterruptedness. So this is very, very deep in this word Nairantari, and we'll have to look at it from many different angles. Satkar. Sat means the truth. Sat means to rise in consciousness. From kru, to do. To do that which leads to rising in consciousness. That is one way to look at it. Devotion to truth. And Satkar can also, we can take the very normal definition or meaning of Satkar to mean in a state of prayer, in a state of homage, in a state of worship. Asevitu. Asevitu, from sevitu, save, to attend to. To attend to properly, that we are attending that to. Now, sevitu is a beautiful word because I don't know if we have it in Hindi, but in Gujarati we have a word called sevan kar, in a sevu. Right? So, sevan means to nourish with love. To nourish with love. I don't know if the same word is in Hindi. Right? So, you're doing your practices over a long period of time, without any, with no interruptedness, uninterruptedness, right? In a state of satkar, in a state of what you call homage, worship, and you're doing it as a mother does sevan to the child, as he gives milk to the child. There is an attitude of, from this we have the word seva. Seva means to worship, to do, right? Dhrada means strong, established, bhumi, and then your foundation, your bhumi, or your ground is firm and strong and well established. So this is the next sutra, right? Now, satkar could also mean high intent. Now, the first thing we have to understand is that when he uses the word kala, is he talking about hours, minutes, and seconds? Or is he talking about something else? Because when the word time comes up in our minds, the first thing, we are so conditioned to time as hours, minutes, and seconds. So when he's saying dirgha kala, right? Nirantara satkar asevitu. Now, like I said, this Tauria Sahib has what you call translated satkara sevitu as when sufficiently valued. Sufficiently valued. Now, value comes from the heart. Value comes from the heart. And it is a part of our emotional center. It is not a part of our intellectual center. I can say the price of this is this, but the value of this. When we fall in love with a person, there is an attraction for that person. So the initial love is because we are attracted to that person. But as we start living together, as we start complementing each other, as we start using each other as a what do you call, step to rise in consciousness to make our journey more fruitful, then the love changes from love through attraction through love through value. You now love the person, not because you're physically attracted to that person, but you love that person through value. Similarly, when we come to a teaching, say Tauriya Sahib's teaching or Gurujev's teaching or anybody else's teaching for that matter, there is an initial attraction to that teaching. And that attraction, then as we start practicing that teaching, as we start implementing the, what do you call, tenets of that teaching in our daily lives, and those tenets start bringing a transformation in our lives. Those tenets start bringing us to a higher state of consciousness. The love for the system, the love for the teaching changes from love of attraction to love of value. And it is this love of value which, once it is there, then we will not say that today I could not do my practices, because we love them. But if today I have not done my practices, then somewhere love is missing, right? But we'll go deeper into this just now. Right? So Tauriya Sahib is saying they must be sufficiently valued. The teaching which we got from him, did we sufficiently value it to implement it in our lives, to practice it every day? Was there value of that teaching? I don't know, but in my life, I've been through many teachers before I came to Tauriya Sahib. And you spend some time with a teacher, and there's a physical presence of the teacher. And one day the teacher is not there, the physical presence is not there. And that is where suddenly that, what do you call, did I waste my time in those years with the teacher? Or did I value my time with him? And because I had been through other teachers when I met Mr. Tauriya in 1988, the minute I saw him, I knew that it's just a few years that we are going to be together, right? And in this few years, I have to achieve that which he's talking about. There is no, what do you call, excuse for anything over here. And that is why his that value comes for what he's telling us, for what he's teaching to us, for what time he can spend with us. So it says, Satu, that moreover, done over a long period of time, Satkar asevitu, done with proper value. Now, another thing which we have to see is there are two processes in life. There's the process of evolution, and there's the process of involution. The body has evolved. The human body is a product of the process of evolution. Nature has gone through so many experiments to bring the human body to what it is today. Now, so we evolve in consciousness. So nature has stopped her evolution with the human body. And from that, each of us individually, we make an effort to evolve in consciousness. But we must understand one thing. We make the effort, but consciousness descends, enu avtaran thai, we say in Gujarati, uska avtaran hota hai. It doesn't, I mean, even though we evolve in consciousness, the consciousness comes as a kind of grace in spite of all our efforts. There is what you call part of grace involved, and that consciousness, it descends. And when the consciousness descends, we come into a state of satkar asevitu. And it is that state, we must be ready. We must be ready for that consciousness to descend at any moment. We do the practices, we fulfill our part of the bargain. But that final descent is a moment of grace. And for that, we have to be in an attitude of worship. We have to be in an attitude of acceptance. And that is why Patanjali has used the word satkar asevitu, and it comes in glimpses. So we do sevan of it. We drink it like the child drinks the what do you call milk from the mother. We what do you call suckle that each moment of that consciousness as it comes down. And so we evolve in one way, and something comes down to meet us. And it is for that which comes down to meet us that we remain in this state of satkara sevitu. So he's saying that this consciousness is going to descend in droplet by droplet, and we must be on a firm ground, dhrada bhumi. We must be on a firm ground. If the ground slips away, then the drop of rain will fall somewhere else. So where did the rain fall? Did the rain fall in the, what do you call, dam? Did the rain fall in our overhead tank? Or did the rain fall in the gutter? Where did the rain fall? Now, nirantar, nirantari. What does that mean? We cannot have the live transcription because then there is a, what do you call, time gap between Zoom and what do you call, declining. We cannot have that because there is a time gap between Zoom and YouTube, so we can't have those, that transcript. Now, what do we mean by an interruption? Supposing I'm practicing something and there is, for some days I don't practice. Is that an interruption? And then I start the practice again. Do we call that an interruption, or do we call that just I took a few days of rest? What would we call that? What would we call that? I would say that is just a few days of rest. After all, it's the human psychic structure. It is the human psychology. You can't expect everyone to be 100% regular. So there will be days where we drop our practices, we are not able to do it, right? Where we forget to do it. But sometimes, instead of just a period of rest or in a small period or small gap, there is something which we can call a change of direction. Now, this is very important. You know, many times over the years, I've been meeting people, and people, they come and tell me, oh, I have done so many things. I have done something called pranic healing, and I've done something called Reiki, and I've done this course on mindfulness, and I've done this course on this, and I've done that course on this. Right? And I remember Ramdulare Bapu, "Main chala to khub pahuncha, kahin bhi nahi, yaani chale hi nahi." This change of direction. I did this a little, then I changed direction. Then I did this a little, then I changed direction. Then I did this a little and I changed direction. In the end, I'm going back from where I came. And we don't realize this, that we keep on changing direction. this changing of direction is a real interval, Nairantari. I don't think Patanjali, if you drop the practices for 3 days, even though Tauriya Sahib told us 7 minus 1 is 0, etc. Right? I mean, I don't think he's talking about that. I think he's talking about if there is a sudden change in direction, and then from you say, okay, I studied the Yoga Sutra a little, but there's nothing in the Yoga Sutra. Now I'm going to study the Bhagavad Gita. And of course, I'll study the Bhagavad Gita for a few weeks or a few months. It's okay, but it seems a little boring. Let us go to the Upanishads, right? And every time there's a change of direction. So, nirantari, nairantari, nirantar, without interruption. So from my side, I would say that taking rest is not an interruption, but if we change direction, then there is an interruption. Right? Okay. Now, I want to now go a little deeper into this, and I want to say it in a different way. Like, what I'm going to talk about is not, I've not seen it in any of the commentaries, but it's something which through my personal journey, which I've come upon. Satu dirgha kale, kal meaning time. Now, let us take the word dirgha, because in Hindi, when we study Hindi grammar, we have rasva, dirgha, and plut, right? So we say rasva and dirgha. Dirgha means to extend it a little, to extend it. So if we say u is rasva, then u is dirgha, right? So we have extended it a little. But extend what? Kale. Extend what? Time. To extend time. Now, let's try to understand this a little bit. Supposing I have a sweet, say, any sweet, say a piece of beautiful chocolate, and I put the chocolate in my mouth and I eat it and I enjoy the chocolate. That's it. When I put it in my mouth and like a child drinks milk from the mother, I do seven of that chocolate, right? I eat it slowly, taking in all the different tastes and everything. Then there is, when I first ate the chocolate, Kal was rasva, short. But when I'm now nourishing the chocolate in my mouth for a long period of time, extending the taste of that chocolate, from rasva Kal, I'm going into dirgha Kal. I hope I'm coming across in this. Please do raise your hands if you know what I'm trying to say. Right? So there is time as linear time from birth to death. And there is time as vertical time where we climb the ladders of consciousness, So is Patanjali saying that when you do your practices, there have to be moments where you go from linear time into eternal time, into higher time. He's not talking about practicing every day and whether there is an interruption or no interruption. I don't know. I don't think so. That is why I'm saying this is my own personal thing which I'm sharing with you. I'm not. You won't find it in any commentaries. So in that moment of eating that chocolate, nourishing, is there a moment when time stops? This linear time stops, and the taste of the chocolate takes me into a higher time, as if this time has stopped and in that higher time, there is an inner feeling of being lifting up, an inner feeling of swinging a little. Okay, I'll try to explain this. This is in a different way. You know, when we were children, we used to go to the fair and there was the ferry wheel. I think everybody has sat on the ferry wheel, right? And when the ferry wheel went up at the topmost point, right? And as it started descending down, there would be an inner feeling of swinging into something, which is totally different. And this, when we get this inner feeling in respect of time, we have moved from linear time into a higher time. So Patanjali is saying, Satu dirgha kale, time has to be stretched. When you're doing your practices, time has to be stretched. Don't just do your practices in ordinary time. I earn money for tomorrow, linear time. Can you see? I will buy a better house tomorrow. That is linear time. This is a different time where you move up into a higher state of consciousness, and there's a sudden feeling that time has stopped, and there's an inner feeling of maybe when we were young and we went out with somebody we loved a lot and we caught hands, sat on the garden bench, or sat in front of the sea and talked to each other. There are those moments where you feel time has stopped when you're deeply in love. And he's saying, Sa tu dirghakal. This practice, this practice has to be taken from linear time into eternal time, into a higher time. Only then is it possible. Only then is it possible. Now, in higher time, what do we mean by nirantarya? What do we mean? When we look at the scale of time, when we look at the, what do you call, time in a scale, what do we mean by without interruption, nirantar, without interruption? What could it mean to us? Now, as we rise in consciousness, perception and experience of time changes. We will take Gurdjieff's ladder of consciousness, moon, earth, planets, sun, etc. Now, what is the relationship in times? What is the relationship in times? And we'll try to understand that. Supposing I have one cell in the body over here, and it is fulfilling certain functions, but that cell has a life of 3 minutes. So by the time it reaches here, the cell has died. And another cell comes and takes its place and continues its functions. Now, what does the 3 minutes in the life of the cell relate to human time? How does it relate to human time? Right? So I'll say man lives for, say, 70 years, more or less, we just say. So 3 minutes of the cell is equal to 70 years of man. Now, how long does it take for man to take in an impression? I look at you and I recognize you. The brain takes 1/16th of a second to do this. Right? Now, this 1/16th of a second, the rishis had a name for this. They used to call it nimish, the flash of an eyelid. I look at you, I recognize you, flash of an eyelid, right? Now, for man, for me, say a flash of an eyelid is 1/16th of a second. But say I am at the level of the earth, then what would 1/16th of a second mean in earth time? I hope I'm coming across in this. So what we call one day, where the earth spins around its axis for 24 hours, spins around its axis for 24 hours, is the earth opening its eye and closing its eye. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? So one nimish for me is 1/16th of a second. One blink of the eyelid for me is 1/16th of a second. One nimish for the earth is 24 hours. So for the earth to open its eyes and look at me and see me, 24 hours. Now, if my consciousness has risen from my level of organic life to the level of the earth, then suddenly the scale of time changes for me. We'll just take it in a different way. Like Tawariya Sahib said, 7 minus 1 is 0. So the earth takes 24 hours for one impression. So the earth opens its eyes, it sees, Mr. Rajan is doing the exercises, practices, very good, right? And 24 hours pass, and again the earth opens, he's still doing the practices. No change at all. In 24 hours, again I'm doing the practices, no change, nirantariye. Right? And again after 24 hours, the earth opens its eyes and he's still doing the practices. Right? So Mr. Tawariya says 7 minus 1 is 0. But when he's talking about 7 minus 1 is 0, he's talking of a different scale of consciousness. He's talking about a different perception of time. Similarly, at the level of the sun, so we move from the earth, we won't stop at the planets, we'll go one step higher to the sun, right? Because the planets also at a higher level of consciousness. So one nimish, one blink of eyelid for me is 1/16th of a second. One blink of an eyelid for the earth is 24 hours. And one blink of an eyelid of the sun will be 70 to 80 years, my lifetime. My lifetime. Can you understand? If I have taken my practices to that level of the prana of the sun, if I've taken my practices to that level, the level of consciousness, please understand, on the earth, transformation is possible. That is, from iron, I can make steel and I can make a beautiful cup out of that steel. The transformation is possible, but out of iron, I cannot make gold. It can be made on the earth, of course, through atomic energy, but atomic energy is a secret of the sun. It is not a secret of the earth. So when our consciousness reaches the level of the sun, suddenly instead of transformation, there is transmutation. And when we die, that moment of death, and the sun has kept its eyes open, this guy, whenever my eyes are open, it's been doing his exercises right till the moment of death, right? Nirantari. So Patanjali, this sutra can be seen in so many different ways. Satu dirghakal. So as we do any practices, try to take those practices from normal time into a little higher time, as if we are swinging into a different time. Those few moments which we have in our memory where we loved someone, where we felt time stopped at some time in our life, right? Try to take it there. So there it will be, we have stretched it. Satu dirghakale nirantariya satkara sevitu. and to be in that higher time, to be able to live in that higher time, to spend more. It can only be done if we are emotionally involved. The minute the emotion goes away, we will fall down into the lower time. The emotion has to be there. The value has to be there. Minute there is no value, there is no love of my inner spiritual journey, I'll fall back into normal time. So he's saying, Satkara sevitu drad. Satkar. Do something where you rise in consciousness, and do it as a mother nourishes the child through giving the milk. That is the way you practice. That is the meaning of Abhyas. And we saw Abhyas is these three sutras, Vritti Nirodha, Swarupe Avastha, and this third sutra. My attention is free, holding presence inside, and then stretch it to a higher dimension of time. Satu Dirgha Kalena Satkara Sevitu. And to remain in that higher dimension of time, it is not possible without a higher emotion, without a love of that state. Satkara Sevitu. So this is the 14th sutra. We've just gone through. Like I said, Tawariya Sahib quoted this a lot. He would keep on saying, unless it is sufficiently valued, unless it is sufficiently valued. He used to hammer it into our heads all the time, right? So maybe I'd like to hammer it a few more times for you. And we go to the next sutra. Sevitu, we can also say that like a bird sits on the eggs and hatches the eggs for a very long period of time. So it is a long period of time, but with that intent that the chicks are going to be born. There is a seed within me which is going to, sprout and spring up. Second thing, unless we are emotionally Manas, I just took the ray of creation to explain the ladder of consciousness. You can take anything. I just said there are levels of consciousness, level of the moon, level of the organic life, level of earth, level of planets, level of sun. Don't take it with Gurdjieff's ray of creation, even though it is his ray of creation. I just want to say there are higher levels of consciousness. And when we reach those higher levels of consciousness, perception of time changes. Right? Perception of, but to remain in that, there must be an emotional attitude to remain in that. There must be a love of that state. Okay, we'll take the next sutra. Drashta Anushravika Vishaya Vitrushnasya Vashikar Sangya Vairagyam. Vairagya is experienced by one who has thirstlessness for the things he or she has heard or seen. It is an understanding of mastery. Drashta, I will just take this, Tawariya Sahib's translation. Non-attachment is the freedom from longing for all objects of desire, either earthly or traditional, either here or hereafter. Drashta, from drush, to see. Not yet. Anushravika. Anu means to follow. We have seen that before. Shru, to hear. To that which follows what has been heard. So what has been seen, what has been heard. Drashta, Anushavika. Vishaya, objects. Objects which are taking part in the drama of life. Vishaya. Vishaya. And this could mean people, it could mean objects. Vitrushnasya. V without, trush, thirst. We have a word tushti. Ho gayi. Tushti means my thirst is quenched. Trushna means I'm still thirsty. I don't know if you remember the famous words of Jai Krishnamurti. And he was sitting under this tree in Ojai at his cottage in Ojai. And he could feel the wind, and suddenly he became the wind. And he could feel the leaves of the tree, and he became the leaves of the tree. And then from his mouth, the words came out, I have drunk from the fountain of life, and my thirst is quenched. Thirst is quenched. So he's saying, Drashta seen, Anushravika heard, objects, etc., things, people, to be in a state of thirstlessness. Now, supposing I come to your home and I see your new TV, and when I look at your new TV, I have to be very authentic in this. Am I looking with the perception of thirstlessness? Or is there rag and dvesh in my perception? Dvesh that you have such a good TV, and rag that I want a very good TV, right? Of course. So is my perception free of rag, dvesh? Is my perception, do I see your TV as a TV, or do I see it as an object to fulfill my desire? So he's used a beautiful word, vitrushnasya, to be in a state free of trushna, free of trushna, right? And trushna is something very, very deep, thirst, or we can say craving. A person who takes psychotic drugs and after some time, it doesn't become a habit, it becomes a craving, much more than a habit. I mean, he's going to do anything to get those drugs. He may even steal to get those drugs, or it may even lead to violence. He may murder somebody to get those drugs, right? So we have to see these 4 levels of desire within us. In English, we have only one word, right? But we'll try to say ichha. Ichha means just a wish. I wish I had this, and then I forget about it. It's just a wish. Ichha I or ichha chali gayi, right? Then from ichha comes desire, kamna, right? Desire. From desire comes vasna. Vasna means now that desire is stuck in my mind. Vasna means vasi jau, to make its residence over there, to make its place of stay over there, right? So in my mind, vasi it has made its residence over there. And trushna is the deepest state. Trushna is where I crave for it. So I go shopping, I see something, and I say, oh, I want to buy this, and then I forget about it. So it's just an ordinary wish, ichha. But I go around in the shop and I come back to this, so ichha mein se kamna, from ichha, desire, from a wish, a desire. Right? But I don't have the money to buy it. I go back home, but it keeps on going in my mind. Instead of leaving it in the shop, it has come and what it's made its place of residence in my mind, and it keeps going round and round. Vasna, it has made its residence over. And maybe I'll take a loan or something and go and buy it. And trushna, oh, it now creates a deep thirst, a deep craving within me. Without getting this thing, I'm going to die. You know, later on, we are going to study the 5 kleshas in Patanjali. And the deepest klesh, which he calls, is fear of death, abhinivesh. I'm just taking a normal translation. And desire he calls as rag. Sometimes rag becomes stronger than abhinivesh. Rag, that is desire, becomes stronger than fear of death. And that is Trishna. That is Trishna. I'll give you an example. Supposing I fall in love with a girl and I come to a state where without this girl, I don't want to live. Now, falling in love with a girl is raga. Fear of death is abhinivesha. But at one point, my rag will overpower the fear of death. If I don't get this girl, I'm going to commit suicide. Can you see? It overpowers the fear of death. And that state of where I want something badly and that can overpower the fear of death within me, that is the state of Trishna. So here he uses the word Vitrushna, that state and opposite of that state, you are free of that state. When you are free of that state, he calls that state as Vairagya. It's such a beautifully coined word. Let us go through it again. Drashta, seeing, anushravya, objects, vitrushnasya, that without thirst for those objects, absolutely no thirst for those objects, that when that control, when that vashika, when that control, when that mastery has come within the what we call student, that he now lives in a state of thirstlessness. And we saw thirst is the deepest of the desires. That sangana, that understanding, that gnan, gna means to know, that to know properly, when I've known that state properly, that is the state of Vairagya. Vairagya we can stay without. Raj means the desire or what do you call coloring in a state of, or we can also stay to be away from any coloring, away from any attachment. So this is the state of Vairagya which he talks about. Now we must understand what he's saying here. See, let us come down to attention. People are asking questions. Okay. So somebody's asked a question that if we are thirstless, in that state of thirstlessness, can we keep ichha kamna vasna? Right? I mean, they won't be there if you're in that state of thirstlessness. But where you have to live your life, so you will learn a way to balance them with the normal doings of life. My usual thing which I advise people is that divide your life into needs, comforts, and luxuries. Fulfill your needs, fulfill your comforts. As a hobby, fulfill one luxury and drop the rest. Drop the rest, right? Otherwise, if our attention is in all this, it cannot be Vairagya. And if there is no Vairagya, if your attention is stuck over there, there is no drashta, what I call Swarupe Avastha. There is no drashtuhu Swarupe Avastha. There is no seer. for the seer to be in its own place, for the seer to observe the workings of the mind, there must be a state of non-attachment. The minute there is attachment to anything, there is no seer. The seer is identified. So we must understand this vairagya, that what is pulling my attention to stop it is vairagya, and where I have to place my attention, we talked of the three things of abhyasa, that is abhyasa, right? So the whole game is of attention. Whole game is of attention. So if you are in this state of thirstlessness, there's no question of ichha, kamna or anything. You just take them as the normal things which you play with in life. You know, like a lotus flower, the water does not remain on its petals. It rises above the, what you call, mud. Similarly, in this state of thirstlessness, we rise above the mud of life, and then nothing can touch us in that state once we are in that state. So saying what is vairagya, and now he calls this the lower vairagya. He calls it as vashikar vairagya. In the next sutra is going to take us to a higher form of vairagya. That is where in vairagya, vashikar means in the vairagya in which there is control. Vashikar means to control, right? So he's saying things which were seen, drashta, things which were heard, anushravika, those things, vishaya, vitrushnasya, to be in a state of thirstlessness for those, no trushna for those, that control, to develop that control in the student, that understanding, that knowledge is vairagya. So this is the first state of vairagya. Vairagya, to be free of attachment. And he starts his Yoga Sutra with Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, Tada Drashtu Swarupe Avasthanam. Then the seer is observing the workings of the mind. But the minute the seer is attached anywhere, there is no observation of the workings of the mind. So this, the seer in its own state, to remain there, we must develop this state of thirstlessness. Not to see things as objects of desire. We see somebody on the road, do we see that person as a person, or do we see that person as an object of desire? We go to a shop, do we see that thing over there, or do we see it as an object of desire? In the old days, the rishis would go into the jungle, because when I see your TV, I see it as an object of desire. But if I see a tree in your garden, I don't see it as an object of desire. The looking at your tree and looking at your TV is two different looks within me, right? So to develop that look, we go into they would go into nature, spend time in nature, because in nature, you don't see the trees and plants and the birds as objects of desire, or you don't see the waves of the sea as objects of desire. I don't say, I want to capture the waves of the sea and put it in my garden. It's not possible, right? So in nature, suddenly the glasses fall down, the lens fall down, and we don't see things as objects of desire. So this is vairagya with control, vashikar. There is still a control of the vrittis. There is still a control of ichha, kamna, vasna, trushna. There is a still holding of that state. There is an effort in the holding of the state of thirstlessness. Right? Now he takes us to now sangna means to name this. So he's saying, the rishi is saying, this state, I call it as vashikar vairagya, sangna, I have named it. Sangna means to name the knowledge. I'm giving you the knowledge of this state as vashikar vairagya. Now we'll go to the last sutra for today, the 16th sutra. Tat param purusha khyatihi guna vaitrishnasya. I will first take the higher form of vairagya is acceptance of of the essential qualities of nature. It comes from a realization of who one is. I will take Mr. Thavaria's translation. The consummation. I remember the consummation of this non-attachment results in the exact knowledge and experience of the spiritual man when liberated from the qualities or gunas. I remember those lectures in Gamdevi when he was explaining this sutra, and he would keep on repeating the consummation of that non-attachment, the consummation of which non-attachment? Vashika, where we are in a state of non-attachment through control. Over a period of time, that control becomes so spontaneous that it becomes effortless effort. And this he calls the consummation of that. Initially, we make an effort to remain in a state of thirstlessness. We make that effort to remain in a state of non-attachment, right? We make that effort that our attention is not identified with what we see and what we hear. We keep the attention free. There is an effort involved, and that effort he has named as Vashika. There's the controller over there. But he says the consummation over a period of time, as we keep practicing this, the consummation of this non-attachment, right? So I used to explain that if two people wanted, I'm repeating what Mr. Thavaria used to say in his lectures. He would say when two people go for a divorce to the judge, the first question the judge asks, was the marriage consumed or not consumed? Was the marriage consummated or not consummated? And he says the consummation of this, right? As we practice, it becomes so effortless. Vairagya, we move into a higher state of Vairagya. Tat, that Vairagya with control, Tat. Param is the higher Vairagya. That was Vashikar Vairagya, this is Par Vairagya, Param Vairagya. Param, Purusha, beautiful word, Purush, beautiful word. Now try to understand that in the third sutra, he used the word drashta, the seer. Now he's using the word Purusha. Pur means the city, right? The person who is living in the city of the five senses is called Purusha. The person who is living in the city of the five senses is called Purusha. So he's saying that Param Vairagya, the higher Vairagya, Purusha Khyati. Khyati to name, Khyati to recognize, Khyati to get a glimpse of. As the Vairagya with control is consummated, as the Vairagya in control from making effort moves to a state of spontaneity and effortless effort, suddenly there is a glimpse of the inner Purush, the person who has been living in this city. The person who has been living, there is a Purush Khyati, the sudden glimpse. And when does that glimpse come? It can only come if there is Guna Vaitrishnasya. There was Vishaya Vaitrishnasya, here there is Guna Vaitrishnasya. Now let us try to understand this. It's beautiful. Thirstlessness of the Gunas, there was thirstlessness of the Vishayas, right? The lower Vairagya, thirstlessness of the Vishayas, the higher Vairagya, thirstlessness of the Gunas. We live life at three different levels. Actually, life is 3 screens at the same time. One screen is that which is outer to the senses. In this outer screen, you and I meet and we say hello, etc., and we have dinner together. This is the outer screen of life. The second is the inner screen of life. I meet you, I say hello, but I say if this guy goes quickly, I'll be free. I don't want to spend more time with him. So on the inner screen of life, something else is going on from the outer screen of life, right? So outer screen of life is events. Inner screen of life is vrittis. I hope I'm coming across this, right? So there is your inner screen of life. There is my inner screen of life. But all these are on one large inner screen of life. So a person who is looking outside and looking inside at the same time, he is living life in 2 screens. One is the screen of outer life, all the events of life. He is my son, you are my friend, etc., etc. And one is the inner screen of life. I like him, I don't like him, rag, dvesh, what we call, etc. Everything that is happening in my thoughts, everything that is happening in my emotions, my sensations, etc. And both these screens are going on parallel. We are living in these 2 worlds simultaneously at the same time. Now, beyond the third, what do you call? Beyond the second screen, there is a third screen where life is just a play of the 3 gunas. Nothing else. Let us try to understand this. On the outer screen, I may be, running for an appointment somewhere, and you come and you, give me a big story of how yesterday you went for a picnic, and you don't stop and you keep on talking. And I want to reach my appointment and you want to keep on explaining your picnic, right? Now this is happening on the outer screen. In the inner screen, I'm in this emotion of hurry. I'm in this emotion of tension. I'm feeling the tension. I'm saying, if you can go away. In your inner screen, you may be saying, all right, this guy is listening so beautifully, etc., etc. Right? So something is happening on the outer screen, something is happening on the inner screen. But there is a third screen in life, and that is the screen of the 3 gunas. In the screen of the 3 gunas, my going for an appointment is Rajagun. It is called active. Your coming and stopping me is called passive, Tamagun. If I have the consciousness to balance the 2, then I bring in the third, which is called Sattva, to learn a way of balancing both of them. If I don't have enough of Sattva, I may react immediately and tell you, hey, get out of my way, I have to reach this appointment. Then that is an absence of Sattva. I have reacted, even though a little Sattva is needed to balance that. So on the third screen, it is a play of the 3 forces, the 3 gunas. On the third screen, there is no personality that this person has come to meet me. It doesn't matter which person has stopped me in my way. It makes no difference. All the third screen is going to tell me that there is Rajas and Tamas has come to stop Rajas. Who that Tamas is and who that Rajas is has no meaning on that third screen. It is just a play of 3 forces. So life, every moment is happening on 3 dimensions. The dimension in front of the senses, the dimension in front of in the mind, and the dimension beyond the mind. Now see the terminology of Patanjali, such beautiful terminology, such beautiful terminology. He's so technically perfect, this person. He says that when the inner observer to the screen of the mind awakens, he calls that observer of the mind as drashta. So he says, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, when those workings of the mind are calmed down a little, that there the drashta, the seer of the mind awakens. This is his technical term for the one who is observing the workings of the mind. Drashta swarupe avastha. But now he's telling us something else, that when you move to a higher form of vairagya, which is not worried about the objects or things or people or events, it is just watching the play of the three forces. That person who was sleeping and can now watch the three forces, he doesn't call that person as drashta, he calls that person as purusha. Right? And the play of the three forces is Prakriti. That which observes Prakriti is called Purusha. That which observes the mind is called Drashta. I hope I'm coming across in this. So initially we observe, we try to look at what is happening to us in the events of the life. Then the inner Drashta, the seer of the mind, awakens and he observes the workings of the mind. And when we reach this higher state of vairagya, param vairagya, para vairagya, when we reach that higher state, the inner purusha, the person who for thousands of years has always come to dwell in the city of the five senses. Pur means the city. The person who has come to dwell in the city of the five senses, he awakens and he observes the working of the gunas. And this can only happen when we are in a state of guna vaitrishnasya. That is, now even the gunas cannot attract us in any way. There is a thirstlessness of the gunas. There was thirstlessness of objects. Now there's thirstlessness of gunas. And that is the highest state of vairagya, which he calls. So we'll go again through this. The first vairagya, drashta, anushravika, drashta seen, anushravika followed that which is heard, vishaya objects, this could be people also, not in a state of thirstlessness, vitrushnasya, vashikar through control. I name this as vashikar vairagya. This is the first vairagya. The second vairagya, from effort to effortlessness, right? That vairagya, param goes into the higher, purusha khyate, where there's a glimpse of that seer of Prakriti, the observer of Prakriti, the Lord of Lords who is sitting inside, that Purush, when he awakens and he observes the workings of Prakriti, it can only happen in a state. He calls this as Purusha Khyati, the glimpse of that inner Purush, the awakening of that inner Purush, the unfolding of that inner Purush Khyati, the one who is observing Prakriti, now not observing the mind. Now all minds come in Prakriti because everything is a play of the three gunas. And when those gunas come back into a state of rhythm and balance, Prakriti dissolves, the Purush remains, right? And that Purush, now there is a total thirstlessness. He's in a state of thirstlessness of the gunas. And in that state, this inner Purush awakens. Initially, it will come as a glimpse, and slowly over a period of time, as we more and more, the what do you call vashikar, the controlling vairagya is more and more consummated, more and more it becomes effortless. That Purush will awaken, and that Purush is not the drashta. He is much higher than the drashta. He is not the seer of the mind. He is seer of the qualities which go into the making of the mind. And that is our object in going into the Yoga Sutra, our aim in going into it. So these are the qualities of an awakened mind, right? And it is these three sutras on Vairagya. Next time we will go further in the Yoga Sutras. Any questions now? We can take those questions. Thank you.
Yes, Swati, please go in.
Yeah.
You have to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
You just talked about non-attachment, like vairagya. So, talk is about like non-vairagya about the things like commodities and stuff like that. So, how we can practice non-attachment with the person or like a people who were in your past, you attached, and for few years, for example, you didn't know that they were there, but in some void, you get to know that those feelings and emotions, or maybe a longing for a person. So how we can
I don't
draw?
know, your voice is not very clear. So I'll just try to explain what I've understood. I don't think I've understood your question, but still I'll try to explain.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but I don't know, there's a lot of disturbance coming. And your voice is cracking at the end.
Yes, Swati, your audio is not very audible.
Rajan bhai, I think what Swati is asking is about how to practice vairagya when one has been there in this world and has a lot of emotional upheavals and memories to
Just
contend with.
remember one thing, right? Rag and dvesh, attachment and what you call aversion. Enjoy life. But when the thought comes for repetition of that enjoyment, put a pause over it. You get it? Supposing we had a good dinner together, right? And the thought, okay, come again sometimes. Now you've sown the seed for something else. You understand? So there you pause. You pause. Okay, I've enjoyed this. Now stop over here. You can say when I'm leaving, come again, but then you say it consciously without sowing the seed of repetition. You get it? Right? Because in normal, what do you call manners and all, we say that you come again. Right? But that come again should be different from the come again. So wherever we enjoy things in life, right? And the minute the thought comes that I want this to repeat, pause over there, bring consciousness over there. Just doing this much will take us into vairagya. Just doing this much will take us. Second thing is that when you wake up in the morning, just make a list of where all my attention is stuck. And usually our attention is stuck in so many places, our physical belongings, our relationships, etc. Right? So even when I hate a person, my attention is stuck over there. Can you understand? Right? So then just say, okay, can I free my attention from these places where all it is stuck? And just relax your attention over there. Just the very knowledge itself will change things. So don't take vairagya as something very big, but within us there is the, what do you call, habit, there is the sanskar that this should repeat or this should not repeat again. That sanskar has to be looked at. The very understanding of that sanskar, the very, what do you call, pausing of that, looking at it with consciousness will take us on the path of vairagya.
Can I add something, Rajan bhai?
Please do, sir.
Swati, one thing which is very helpful, which can be very helpful to anybody, is that you do something which can raise the vibrational energy, vibrational frequency in your body. Because when you are in a high state of vibrational frequency, then you are less likely to fall prey to negative emotions. And it will become much easier for you to really negotiate any emotional upheavals or ups and downs that you might face. And that is where Tavaryaji's exercises come in very handy. Anybody who does those exercises on a regular basis will find that the very content of the mind begins to change. And it becomes, many qualities begin to manifest very naturally.
Simple thing. Supposing somebody has hurt me and the thought of that person keeps on coming. Now take it as an exercise that every time that thought comes, I will try to drop it. Every time that thought comes, I will try to drop it. It's a very difficult thing to do, but over 6 months, suddenly you'll see that a small gap has come. That small gap is the beginning of vairagya. Take it as a practice. I'm sure somebody has hurt you in life, right? And that hurt keeps on repeating, right? And just take it as trying to drop it. And I can tell you one thing, I'll take it a little further, that if we can drop the feeling of that hurt, that person also changes. Whether he knows it or not. Whether he knows it or not. There is so much power in that action of ours. But don't do it for that.
And again, one thing is that Smriti is one of the 5 modifications.
Right.
As Patanjali has said. So there are those 5 modifications and Smriti is one of them. And it is a very powerful thing. It is the secretary to the mind. Smriti determines a lot of things that we do in life, but we become captive to that Smriti. It is something that is holding us in chains. To be aware that I am falling prey to my memories. That is enough to get out of the strangled hold of the memory.
Any more?
Yeah, namaskar.
Namaskar. Namaskar ji.
Namaskar. Yeah. Anyway, first of all, thank you so much for the lovely knowledge. Honestly, it's really amazing. Now, I had a question regarding, the new, sorry, when you met.
Your voice is breaking.
Hello. Yeah, when you met. No, okay.
Ma'am,
Now
there
is it okay?
there is lot
Hello?
of other noises.
Is it
coming.
okay now?
Yeah. You go ahead. It is there is a time delay. In your speaking.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
I had the earplugs. So my question here was that you said turning points in life. Like it says that till the disciple is not ready, the guru. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Right.
Hello.
Yeah,
Okay.
please go ahead.
Till the disciple is not ready. Okay. Till the disciple is not ready. The guru appears after the disciple is ready. Like, we go through so much. You said, some people say, I've done this, and they're all diversions in life. Like, there's a book I'd read about the turning points in life that, that you keep on having turning points till you reach the final thing. So, like, even my journey, like your journey, you said that you were with Ramdullah Babaji and then you reached Tawariya. So, sometimes maybe the time is not right. Like, do you think it's like that till the time is not, because today's lecture was so beautiful on time, that till the time is not right, even if you keep on changing and struggling, going from here to there, looking for the inner happiness, looking for the truth, and ultimately you find it. So how do you relate to this aspect? Because like my life has been similar, jumping from here to there, going to so many, and I had read Tawariya's books before, but didn't understand it till recently, until when I came to India and all that. So, and I met some of the disciples. So what I'm saying is that the time is not right. I mean, is that supposed to be a ripened time? As we said, the mango is right. So time.
I'll try to answer the question.
I mean, we may be going from here to there. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Tawariya Sahib used to talk about something called point in time. Point in time. So he said the divine fragment is within us. And at a certain point in our life, it speaks out to us in a certain way. It may be through an event in life. And many times this will, what you call, synchronize, where big shocks come in my life. And suddenly there will be an urge to move inwards. An urge to move inwards. And he calls this the first point in time. The first point in time. And he says that this point in time is astrological also. Is astrological also. There is a certain condition of planets at that time. A certain condition of planets at that time. And at a certain time, that condition will be repeated. Does not mean the planets will be in the same position, but the condition which comes out of the planets will be repeated, and we will move one step higher on our journey. And that is when our real journey will start. Now, between these 2 points, the first point in time where the inner divine fragment speaks to me and says, what are you doing? You're spending your whole life doing this. Look a little bit inside, look at me, right? From that first point to the second point, that time will elapse, right? Now, in certain students, the understanding comes very fast and the second point comes very quickly. In certain students, the second point takes a longer time to come. Can you understand what I'm trying to say? The pathway to truth is only one. There is only one pathway. Everything else is a staircase to that pathway. Whether it is Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, this, whatever religion, these are all staircases leading to that one pathway. You understand what I'm saying? Now I have this first point in time and the second point in time till I reach the pathway. I keep on climbing different staircases. And many people love to climb staircases. They love to go up in the lift and come down, etc. So till I come to that point where my journey starts, there is a lot of what do you call wandering, you know, and a certain understanding must come. And because now the brain has progressed, it's not the same brain which was 50 years ago. It's not the same brain which was 100 years ago. Today's brain can understand. I don't have to go through all this. I can shorten this distance between the first point and the second point. And through that understanding, that comes faster, right? So that is the first thing. The second thing you asked is when the disciple is ready. When the disciple is ready. So what is the level of being of the disciple? Has he passed the first point or has he passed the second point, right? It depends on the understanding of the disciple. It depends on the understanding of the disciple, right? And you see, a time comes in the disciple's life where there is no physical guru. There's no physical guru. Each moment of life is the guru. Life is the ultimate guru, right? Or you can say now the inner guru is throwing its light. And the outer guru only catches the hand of the disciple to that point. To that point, right? So if we are ready, then somebody will come. The knowledge will come from somewhere. We don't have to worry about that. But have we understood what we know till now? Right? Are we practicing what we know till now? If we practice, that very practicing will open different avenues for us. You get it? So, I mean, it's don't take it as an examination when the disciple is ready. As the disciple grows, the guru also grows. The guru also becomes very vast. Can you understand what I'm trying? Then every moment, then if the wind is pushing the curtain in my room, that curtain is my guru. In that very motion of the curtain, I suddenly may understand the laws of the pendulum or the laws of how the mind swing or something. The curtain has become the guru. You understand what I'm trying to say? So it is not that when the disciple is ready, some person comes running or something. As the disciple grows in understanding, the guru also grows and everything becomes the guru. You get it?
Yeah, I do. And like other stepping stones, they're also part of learning. So you always learn something from even the stepping stones before you come to
there
this,
is something called
wherever
vivek
you be, like That's what I mean.
There is something called Vivek inside. There
Yeah.
is the power of discrimination, right? And
Yeah.
we must be able to discriminate what is proper learning and what is useless learning, right? So certain suffering in life is useless suffering. It's not going to do anything to our ego, but suffering which hurts our ego, suffering which dissolves our ego is important suffering. Similarly, in life, what is useless and what is useful, we must have that minimum, that inner this thing. We can't say everything is a stepping stone. Definitely everything is a stepping stone, but there is something called inside where we can, separate the husk from the corn, right? And we don't want to keep on running behind the husk.
Thank you so much. Very well explained. Thank you.
So there is a question in the chat box from
Yeah.
Govind.
How can I
Yes.
how can I understand that my direction is changing most of the time and how to be in one direction? This is a beautiful story of Tilopa and his disciple Naropa. And before Tilopa met Naropa, Naropa went to many gurus. And so many of the gurus really didn't know anything, but still Naropa progressed because his attitude was right. So, and the story goes that one day the guru told Naropa to walk on water, and of course Naropa, with full faith in the guru, he walked on water. So the guru said, if the disciple can do it, maybe I can do it too. And he went and he drowned in the water, right? And then of course Naropa met Tilopa. So what I'm trying to say is that how do I know? We don't really know at our level of being. We have to take the help of somebody who has walked the path before, and they give us, and they're not going to tell us directly unless there is that relationship between the guru and disciple. But we need to sometimes take the help of someone. And I can tell you something, if our attitude is authentic, if our aim is authentic, if the inner, fire is authentic, then life will tell us in any way. Life will tell us in any way. I'll give you a small example. That I'm talking about something which happened 25, 30 years ago. That one guru called me in his ashram to teach his students the exercises and the 3-step rhythmic breathing. And so I taught them, and then the guru called me in his room. And he says, the guru was quite old. And he says that I play the pakhavaj, Sorry, I play the mrudang. And he says, my guru used to play the mrudang in the Jaipur temple. And even if the king of Jaipur wanted to hear him, he would not go to the court. The king had to come to the temple to hear him. And he said that then independence came and all the musicians and artists, they were without a job because overnight all the kingdoms, they vanished. So in those days, Jawaharlal Nehru created something called Lalit Kala Academy to take care of all the musicians and all who were without a job. And today, where there's Ravindra Nritya Mandir in Bombay, I don't know if you've seen it, but there it was an open ground and many huts were there, and all these artists were staying in the huts over there. And his guru was also there. So he's telling me that one day Jawaharlal Nehru was going to visit them. So they said, let us play something for Jawaharlal Nehru. And he says, my guru stood in the middle and he told them, all the different artists, with whichever instrument you play, your instrument, play whatever you like. And I will play the mridang in such a way in between that everything what you're playing is coming into harmony. So he says each individual artist, what he was playing was their art, their kala. But he says, my guru, when he brought all the kala together and brought it into one harmony, that is called bhakti. That is called, so he's saying, Rajan, bhakti mein ras hai, kala mein shrungar hai. Right? So now, I mean, suddenly now I just met this person, but for me, it was a big turning point in my life. He's telling me, Rajan, abhi tumhara kala ko bhakti mein tum transform kar lo. Tum kala se bhakti mein chale jao. So what I'm trying to say is that if we are authentic inside, then from somewhere, one word, one line is more than enough to put us in the right direction. But if our search is not authentic inside, then there will be keep on changing of direction and we won't know where we are going. So don't worry about how to know whether we are changing direction. See that from inside you're authentic, your search is authentic, your fire is authentic from inside. Right? And I'll tell you, whenever there is change of direction, the wind will blow and you'll know you have to change your direction.
Thank you. There is a question from Jayesh Jani. Acha, he has a suggestion. He says many times Rajan Bhai is mentioning about Mr. Gurjieff in this group. Maybe many people are not aware about him, his teachings. A kind request that if feasible and administrations agree, Rajan Bhai can talk about him briefly anytime, if not today.
I'll definitely try. Yes. Any other question?
Rajan Bhai, I don't have a question, but I would like to share something.
Please do so. Please do so.
You have been speaking about the vertical time, and you spoke about attention today and how there are different levels of attention and different levels of awareness. So what I have been experiencing is that, usually the mind is totally fragmented and our attention is drawn at so many things inside, both inside and on the outside. But if once suppose pranayam is done or some exercises are done and the attention turns inwards and the breath becomes more subtle, more stable, and gradually the senses stop functioning. So the outer world starts disappearing and the attention gets totally focused in the body. First it comes to the body, then from the body it travels down to the prana, what is happening in the pranic body, that comes into focus. And therefore after it travels to the emotional body, or one begins to see what is happening due to memory or emotions or whatever. And as this focus or attention gets more and more refined, then there comes a time the mind slows down and one is able to see that one thought arises and it falls down, and then another one arises, and between two subsequent or two consecutive thoughts there is a gap. And this gap is a very big turning point, because this is where there is absolute attention and no division, and there is no abhav there. One is fully aware and conscious, and it's a very wonderful state. And if one somehow maintains that state for a while, then it is possible for one to go into what we can call multidimensional awareness, that one is not only aware of what is within himself, one is also aware of the sounds on the outside, maybe the wind is blowing and how the wind is touching the body or whatever is happening. And yet at the same time there is absolutely no attachment or no aversion. It's a state of just becoming the witness to whatever is. And as this state deepens, because there is a state of neither grabbing nor giving up, then the kind of boundary between the inside and the outside begins to disappear. And there I felt that at times there was this kind of feeling that, all the body or everything is dissolving. And once Tawariyaji had told me that, to be there, you have to be strong enough to experience what the heat that lies at the core of the sun. And once or twice I had this experience of this whole thing dissolving and being replaced by a sea of consciousness. And in that, again, there was this kind of feeling that I am still witnessing. There was a witness who was observing. And then this question arose, or this query arose, who is witnessing? And even the witness disappeared. And this was a wonderful moment where there was just being and nothing else. And the way Patanjali has described it today, I have understood that it was the state of Purusha, where the three gunas and everything has just disappeared, or they had been put into a kind of a silent sea of awareness. And yet, this was a wonderful state, but after a few moments, this thought arose, oh, this is it. And the whole thing disappeared.
The being became the becoming.
Being became becoming. But just being there, I experienced what is vertical time, because there was no time. Even there was no present moment. When we begin to go within, the journey begins into the present moment, but there was no present moment, nothing. It was a state of absolute timelessness.
Yes. It's a beautiful state. Beautiful state.
It was a great state to be, but see, the moment I became aware that it's a great state, the thought arose, oh, this is it. And then I was back.
It
So
grows.
the challenge is how to go there and remain in that state. And this is what that effortless effort must become. So one can remain in that state and yet come down and perform the functions in this world,
Yes.
and go back.
You can live on both levels.
Start living on both levels.
Later on, we will come to one sutra, sir, which is called Drashta Drashi Matra. Right? So the seer, the witness, is no longer the witness. Drashi Matra is the process of seeing.
This is the process of seeing.
And you touched that.
So this is something which I have been, experiencing, that the linear time is made up of events, is being created by the senses. But when the senses no longer function, then we can really refine our attention and climb that staircase and go into the vertical time. So thank you so much. When the explanation that you gave, it clarified a lot of things. Thank you.
Shall we call it a day, sir?
If there are no more questions.
No more questions.
We just end with a prayer for universal goodness. Sarvesham swastirbhavatu. Sarvesham purnam bhavatu. Sarvesham sukhino bhavatu. Sarvesham mangalam bhavatu. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनो, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चिद् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।